Howdy ho, Arkansas Pilgrim here again. Finally getting around to doing some seed starting. And what I'm going to be showing right here is starting my cilantro and my spinach. I'm a little bit late for cilantro and spinach, actually. I think February 1st, they said, is the start date for those. I'm in zone 7, but I'm going to get these started and then be able to set them out. And then probably have to cover them up a few times to keep the frost from causing damage, because even though April 15th is the average last frost date, that's an average. So, and I'm using egg crates on these. I'm not a big fan of egg crates for other things, because if you have to transplant them multiple times into larger containers, I'd rather just start with the larger container at the final spacing, which is another gardening technique. We'll get to that later. The way I've planned out, which is also something I'll show later, is I'm going to have about 36 or so spinach plants. So I've got 36. Actually, no. I think I'm actually going to have about 72 spinach plants because I do the square foot gardening method in some things, and that's something, again, I will get to later. And I should just tell you about this later. That's what I should title this video. But in every square foot, there's 9 plants, and I was going to plant 8 squares. 8 times 9, 72. Hey, there's more internet math for you. But I'm going to go ahead and start these. And cilantro, I'm just going to do, I think, 18 plants. There's 1 cilantro plant in a square foot. I've got 24 here, but I may end up doing some extra. Sometimes things don't sprout, and then sometimes you get more than 1 seed sprouts. So, but before I plant the seeds, one of the things I'm going to do, and there's many ways to do this. You want to wet down the dirt before you put the seed in, because when you pour water in, can make the soil boil up and turn over and the seed sink to the bottom, or maybe up to the top or something. It can be a mess. So you always want to wet your planter stuff down first. Sometimes you can just spray it with like a sprayer, but this is so dry, I'm going to go ahead and just pour some water in everything. And this is actually kind of how I water them later too. I use something, maybe a container with a little more control, but here I don't have any seeds yet, so I'm just pouring some water in. But and the planting mix I use is a mixture of I think it's probably the cheapest potting soil I could. Oops, got a little crack in the thing there. That's weird how the soil, sometimes the soil doesn't seem very absorbent. I've had that. I'm not sure what the deal with that is. You think it would just soak right in, but in my potting soil I think it's a mixture of cheap potting soil and some of my own soil here. I'm one of those, everybody has their own opinion on what kind of starter mix to use. I think you should use some of the soil they're going to be planted in. And that's based on probably somebody else's opinion about, the shock of transplant and going from one type of soil to another. So I figured I'd just give them a little head start by having some similarity to it. And for those of you that are just starting, on starting seeds like this, don't worry about getting it too wet unless it's just, all water. Because these can actually dry out pretty quick. And you don't want to have totally soggy soil all the time when something's growing. But this is going to take a while to germinate, and you don't want the last thing you want when it's germinating is it to dry out. And you can see it's and you'll have a different experience. So yours may get wet depending on what your soil type is. I mean, it may get wet super easy. If you have a sandy soil, that'll happen. There's some clay and stuff in this, and I've had I actually was already doing a little bit of what you see me doing now, and there was one, a couple of these had was mostly water all at the bottom, and the soil was floating on it. It was totally dry, even though I'd poured water into it. But get them saturated before you put your seeds in, because the seeds are going to need some water, and they will. Of course, you don't want to keep doing that. You don't want to have it this wet from now on, but get it wet first. And actually, because there's just a small amount of soil here, and you're going to have it in some, like I'm going to have this inside where it's warm, you don't want it to dry out. You want them to be wet when they first start off. That helps them germinate. So anyway, I'm going to finish getting the soil wetted, and then I'll go ahead and plant the seeds. All right, when you're going to be starting seeds, you can use any different kind of container. One of the containers, you can use like aluminum pie pans, and what I've got here is an old baking, like an old cake pan. It got kind of, the non-stick coating got scratched or something, got kind of rusty, and hey, do what you can with what you have where you are. Why go buy planting trays when you've got stuff already handy? Or, as you'll see in another part of the video that I've actually already shot, is using egg cartons. Now, but today I'm going to be planting some cabbages and also some tomatoes. Okay, once I've got the soil with, at least, good amount of moisture, ready to start planting the seeds. And I'm going to be planting cabbages here, and cabbages are cold weather plants. So I'm going to be able to transplant these from here once they grow up enough, and then go plant them directly. This should happen within like 2 or 3 weeks, I think. So I'm going to be able to put them fairly close together. You don't have to worry about spacing too much, like final spacing in the garden where they're going to crowd each other. Here, these are, you should be able to pull the plants out when you go to transplant them. And even then, you can always use a pair of scissors or something and coat through there. Surprisingly, that's not really that big a deal, cutting the roots off. And this will come up later, but pulling the thing up and having the roots exposed to the air a lot is more of a shock to them than actually cutting them off. And I've even read that sometimes cutting the roots is good because it actually stimulates them to grow more when you transplant. But not sure about that. But I've got, so I'm going to plant these at about 1.5 inches. I could probably get away with 1 inch, but I think that's probably too close. I'm going to go ahead and go 1.5 inches spacing on these. And I've got a, let's see, what is it? A 15-inch by about 10-inch. I'm going to go and put them in about 1 inch from the side, and it tapers, so that's okay. I'm going to start here. And I like, I use pencil, stick a pencil hole. And then, let's see, let's double check it, make sure this is actually about, that is 1 inch. So I got, and every 1.5 inches, stick a hole. And there's that one thing about some of these plantings, they got chunks of stuff in it, you got to move those out sometimes. But, okay, where was I? I was one there, 1.5 inches, 3, 1.5, another 1.5 inches. Geez, I'm losing track of myself. Okay, there's, from there is 1.5 inches, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5, 9, 10.5, 12. There we go. Okay, and those are kind of hard to see, but they do cast a little bit of a shadow. I like to go ahead and just put all the holes in and then put the seeds in. Okay, here is, I've got a lot of my seeds, and I'll do another video on this actually, but you can make your seeds last a real long time if you keep them cool and dry. Plastic bags are not the greatest. They actually do kind of breathe, but I've got multiple layers here. Actually, up until recently, I've been keeping this in a jar, so I'll go into more detail on that on the summertime, but that's why these are, all this stuff's like this. I'm going to go ahead, geez, they're amongst this. I need to separate these into the ones I'm just going to be using this year, which is, there's these are actually the cabbages that I planted back in the fall. There'll be a video link in the description for that if you got nothing better to do, you can check that out. There's a mammoth red rock. They're the large purple cabbage, and smaller. The smaller cabbage, a coeur de boeuf, or however French pronounce that stuff. It's a funnier looking one. I got this because this was the only one they had that was similar to what I was looking for. They didn't have regular green cabbage heads at the time. You know how the whole seed shortage thing was going. So, but these are smaller, and I'm going to be planting like 28 of these, which is, what did we say? This was 9 by 6. So we got 3 times 9 is 27. Okay, so this, yeah, well, we'll wait. We are going to have to make some sort of division here, so remember what's what. You know, when they come up, they're probably not going to look that different. Okay, here we go. You should always plant a couple. You know, I mean, if you're really cheap like me, and especially since these seeds, if you package them right, will last a long time. No sense wasting a whole bunch of seeds. I think I only planted 1 in each hole, and I may just do that now. And you just go and you make sure, well, I guess I'm planting 2 in that one. Just make sure you're dropping it in the hole. And some of these, especially these dark colored ones, are going to disappear. But this is not really all that critical a thing. You do want to get them deep. You don't want them too close to the surface, but the rule of thumb is a quarter or 4 times the size of the seed. So these obviously don't need to be very deep. Even if you forget what it is on the package, or you have them saved someplace else, this is like probably 1/4 inch. You could almost just put them on the surface and push them in. If you got something like a pea or a bean, those are going to be 1 inch, and of course those are also a lot easier to plant because they're larger. Some of these I'm getting 1 or 2 in. And when you get more than 1 in, if both plants come up, if you're doing like what I'm doing and you're planting just mostly 1 in each hole, when you get, and I'm going to go back through and put some in others. If you get 2 plants coming up, if you got more than you need, you just snip off the weaker looking one when you go trying to transplant. If you otherwise, you can actually carefully transplant them separately. You can stick a pencil in, loosen it up, and pull one of them out and move it and transplant it. So I'm going ahead and adding some extra seeds to the other places because I wanted to do 28, and there's 27 holes. Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and just have that half be these, and if I get double things coming up, I'll end up getting enough plants at the when it comes time to transplant. I do need And what I'm going to, well, you'll see what I do later to designate what's what. Now, going to do the others. See, they look the same. Can't tell. So, I only need 20. I'm going to start from this other side. Okay. Now, just go and push this cover over. What's nice about having this moist and fine soil. Just kind of cover, just move it around a little bit and it covers it. You kind of do want to compact, make sure you get it covered first. You don't want to smash it up too much. You do want it to be in contact. You don't want to have a covered over hole. You want the soil to actually compact around the seed. You don't want to smash it down either. And if you're cheapy like me and you've got this thing that's got these big chunks, you probably want to take the big chunks out. Shouldn't interfere with it popping up, but because you put it into a hole and it'll come up. But if I'm going to put something in that middle there, we'll see. But now, what you do, actually I'll show what I do, and I'll show you, I think I'll just add some pictures of that at the end. Is I have some popsicle sticks, or you can, you can go and buy these little plastic things that you can ride on and then watch them, and they're probably not much, but I happen to have popsicle sticks. I write on what it is and stick it over in the side. And if I've got two things in one container, I'll put some kind of divider there so that it'll differentiate between them. Here, if I don't plant anything here, there'll be a space when they come up, and it'll be obvious what they are. But that's how I start seeds. And I'm going to stick it in a window inside the house. I don't have a greenhouse, but being inside the house is warm enough. I've got a window that faces south, so it gets plenty of sun. And then you want to keep them moist throughout the whole time that they're germinating and sprouting. And once, if you've got it in a window in the sun, it'll end up drying out pretty quick, especially if you've gotten the soil moistened. So what I do is I take, this is a recycled plastic spray bottle. I use this to water because the last thing you want to do is pour some water in there, and like I said before, churn it up and have the seed go who knows where. There you go. That's how I start my seeds. Use a pencil to poke a hole because it makes a nice clean hole. A lot of times the dirt will stick to your finger and it fills back in. And it's good to measure. And you don't have to be, totally OCD on it, but you do need to, have a decent spacing between so that you have the individual plants, and it'll also make it easier to transplant later because you can take a spoon and scoop up and take some soil with it and leave the roots in contact with the soil, and it'll be much less of a shock when you transplant. But I guess I'll show you that when I'm doing the transplanting. Okay, here's how the seeds that have started are coming along so far. Here's all the spinach, which has come up doing very well. The cilantro is, it's gradually come up. It's a lot slower to come up than spinach, but it is coming up. You've got, anyway, see some of it there. Here's my cabbage. I went ahead and covered it with some clear clear wrap because I didn't have a plastic cover big enough for that, and I got other plastic covers on those. This is my peppers. I didn't realize I had a cover that would fit on there. It doesn't clip on, but I was watching John at Will It Grow on his seed starting hack, where he was talking about using sand as a cover and all that. I highly recommend you go and check that video out, because I used his method for planting these tomatoes, not using the sand, but just putting the seeds on top and then covering them with a layer of, I just used potting soil, so that it takes half the time. You don't have to, poke all the holes and then place all the seeds. You just place the seeds directly, and when you cover them over, you have a nice, you have a nice cover, a nice depth, control of the depth the seed is, rather than whether you poke the hole too deep or not deep enough, or worry about whether or not it even falls in the darn hole when seeds are sticking to your fingers and things. And one little thing, I guess I will call it a hack, has to do with watering when you've got them in these little containers. I may have mentioned it before. Using a spray bottle is a gentle way to water, but it also it may take a while. While I was taking so much time to keep these wet, I just got the idea. It's probably not the first one to do this, but just taking a drinking water bottle and poking a hole in the top, using a ice pick or something, and then you can put quite a bit of water, either a lot or a little. Pretty handy. Anyway, sorry for the hodgepodge of this video. It's a bit disjointed, but I decided to go ahead and put the pieces together. I've been going back and forth doing different things. There's always an excuse as to why you can't get something done, but I thought it was more important to get seeds started than it was to make a nice, coherent, produced video out of the process. There's plenty of other people on ShedWars, especially my captain, Arkansas Woodcutter. Check him out too, along with John. Hey, we poke fun at each other. We're going to be doing that a lot more, but hey, we're all in this to grow some food. So anyway, God bless y'all. See you next time.